You're now listening to Sound Talent Media. Check out more shows at soundtalentmedia.com.
This episode is brought to you by the new true crime docuseries American Nightmare, only on Netflix. In 2015, the Vallejo, California Police Department received a strange phone call about a kidnapping. But when the truth is stranger than fiction, you won't know who to trust or what is real. A fast-paced true crime thriller with cliffhangers at every turn. Watch American Nightmare now, only on Netflix.
ABC Tonight. The Bachelor is back, and everyone is falling for America's heartthrob, Joey Graziadei.
Chef's kiss, 10 out of 10.
He's taking another shot at love.
I am definitely ready to find my wife.
But will he find his perfect match?
I am freaking out.
I'm about to lose it.
There's something I need to know.
I'm done here.
I thought it would be easier.
The Bachelor premieres tonight, 8/7 Central on ABC and stream on Hulu.
Hey there, everybody. How you doing? I'm doing grand myself. I hope you are doing grand too. Before we get into this episode, I got a couple messages for you. One being, this episode is brought to you by the fine folks at the Fear the Riff Expo. Been talking about it for a couple weeks now. Or months. How long have I been talking about it? Quite a while. Fear the Riff Expo is happening in Brooklyn, New York City on Saturday, August 11th. I'm going to be there. A whole bunch of other people are going to be there. We're going to be doing some Tone Mob VIP stuff. If you want information on that, send an email to info@tonemob.com. We'll be making it happen. It's going to be a good time. I think it's going to be even bigger and better than last year. A lot of my favorite folks are going to be out there. I'm really excited. Really, really excited for this year's event. I think it's going to be even better, and we're just going to keep on improving and rocking and riffing and all that good stuff. So come out Saturday, August 11th to the Fear the Riff Expo in Brooklyn, New York City. This episode is also brought to you by the wonderful folks over at Sinusoid. They've been sponsoring this podcast for so long, and I can't tell you how happy that makes me, and I can't tell you how happy you will be if you purchase some slivers, because I was just doing a little refiguring of my itty-bitty pedal board the other day, and I quite literally, got an entire additional pedal on that board because of the slivers and how tiny they were. They saved the day. They're the best. Sinusoid's the best, and you should go over to their website and check out all their offerings, including the sliver. The sliver is my favorite thing ever, but I can't do a spot on that every time. Well, I guess I could, but I probably shouldn't. So go over to sinusoid.com, check out any of the hundreds of combinations of cables with a 100-year warranty, and you'll be smiling all the way to wherever you're going. And you're going somewhere. I don't know where it is, but you'll smile. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the ToneMob.com podcast, the show about guitar tone and the people behind it. I'm your host, Blake Weiland, and with me today I have none other than Mr. Kevin Equitz of Equitz Guitars. How you doing, sir?
Fantastic, sir. Thank you.
It is a real treat to have you on. It's been a long time coming. I mean, at least 2 years in the making, right?
Yeah, it's a treat to be on the show.
Let's see. I'm trying to retrace our little rough history here. Seems like we first met at Winter NAMM, 2015 or 16? I can't remember. It was whenever you had guitars at the New Neighbor booth. I don't remember what year that was.
Yeah, I think that would have been something like that.
One of those two options?
16 or something. Well, it always throws me up because it's right at the beginning of the year, and it always seems like it's so much further away in time than it really was. So the years, for some reason, they just throw me off. It's like I'm on some weird fiscal year that I can't sort out with the NAMM shows.
I kind of feel the same way. I always am a year behind with that. I'm like, technically we've already done the 2018 NAMM, but it doesn't feel right to say that for some reason. I feel like next year.
And it's like for that show. Oh, sorry, cut out. I talked over you. What were you saying?
Oh, no. I was just going to say, like, it's just a weird thing. I don't know why it would be that way, but it is, apparently.
Well, it seems like you're doing all this work to get ready for the show, and that's all in the year previous. So, in my head, it's like, and I'm not even like an exhibitor there. I can only imagine the people that are, but all that work you've done was really part of the year prior.
Mm-hmm. For sure. So maybe we should just get right into it for those that don't know about you. We'll just start with your musical backstory and kind of, I know you play several different instruments, so I'd like to hear kind of how that progressed and what made you want to start building guitars and being in commercials and stuff.
Yeah, commercials. Sure. So the best beginning of the story, I guess, is how musical my family is, right? My dad's a drummer. My mom has a bit of a music background as well. And on top of that, I mean, there's really just this overwhelming love for music. We've always played music and we've always enjoyed music. At the dinner table, it was always like a cool treat to be the one to get to pick what we listened to at dinner, which is probably why I can't stand the sound of people chewing, because I grew up just listening to music while we ate. And so my dad, he's primarily a drummer. He can play guitar too, but drums were really his thing. And so I have an older brother, and my brother and I grew up playing the drums because that's what dad did. And so around junior high, my brother got into playing guitar. When he was in junior high, I was younger. And he learned really quick and got really good really fast. And so then my energy just kind of went into playing drums. It's like, well, he's got guitar covered. Let me just focus on drums. So that was my thing, like through the, junior high and high school years. And right around high school, kind of realizing how much more portable a guitar is. I got into playing guitar. A lot of my friends played too. So it was just a way to kind of participate. Everybody's hanging out, they pull out the guitars, and it's like, oh, hey, why don't you give me something that I could hit with a stick. It was not that much fun. So
right.
So learning chords and things like that was kind of where I started. And then also like around kind of later in high school, like beginning in college, that was when I realized how much fun bass is. Bass is kind of like playing drums and guitar at the same time, in my head at least. And it's nice because you can kind of hang out in the background. You don't have all the pressures of like doing the solo and all that stuff. And there's like this cool, like unspoken language thing with the drummer, the way that the drummer and the bass player kind of play off each other. And if instruments are like languages, it's kind of like, learning Latin and Spanish and Italian. There are a lot of words that might kind of cross over, and you feel like if you know one language, you're already, a good percentage of the way there towards the next. And so kind of being a drummer inside, I think, helped inform, my playing as a bass player or as a guitar player, and vice versa. Like when I got into guitar more, I think it made me a better drummer, if that makes any sense.
It does.
So anyway, that was kind of the thing. But like I said, my dad and my brother had guitars too. And so eventually we were, collecting guitars little by little. We would, it was like a big achievement, to earn a new guitar and kind of work your way up. And so restringing the guitars was really something I enjoyed doing. It was maybe a bit of a chore, I think, for them, but it was really fun for me. And it was something I got to do for them. And that felt good to kind of help support them. And so little by little, it was like, replacing tuners on one thing. And that whole thing kind of fascinated me. But in college, I was studying art. So I was getting a lot of like design instruction and just, mindset. And so it was in one of my classes where I had to give like it was not supposed to be an impromptu speech. It was impromptu because I didn't prepare for it, but I had to present like an artist statement to the class. And so basically a couple minutes before I had to go up there, I just told the whole class, I'm going to build guitars. And the response was good. And it was one of those things. It's like, well, I said it, now I got to do it. And it just made a lot of sense, like as much as I love music and I love instruments, and the electric guitar has always fascinated me. Even being a drummer, the guitar was just fascinating. They came in I think give away my age. I grew up, I was really young in the 80s, and the 90s were kind of those like formative junior high and high school years for me. So when I was really young, like the guitars were these bright colors and they were all crazy shapes, and the music video was such a big thing. So wielding an electric guitar was like having some sort of cool like science fiction weapon almost, and so they just fascinated me. And I remember my brother and his friends getting electric guitars and just staring at them and the hardware, and it was like they were so complex to me. So anyway, right. Having a chance to take one apart or put one together, that was kind of the thing. So yeah, that's essentially it in a nutshell. Like after college, I started working right away, got married right away, and there wasn't really time, money, or space really to get into it. So in that little period, I did a lot of just research, just watching a lot of videos, looking at books and all that kind of stuff. So when the time came, I'd saved up enough dough to get enough parts to do a parts caster. It was a Strat style, white Strat. I wanted to do one with lipstick pickups because I had seen like Stevie Ray Vaughan and also Henry Garza of Los Lonely. No, not. Is it Los Lonely Boys?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Anyway, I'd seen this guitar out there. It was kind of like Stevie Ray Vaughan's Charlie Caster, and it just looked so cool, and it wasn't like anything that I had, and I figured, well, that'd be a good place to start. And really, the way that a Strat is designed is just fantastic. You can get the pickups from one place, the hardware from another place, the body from a third, and the neck from a fourth, and you can put them all together with screws and a little bit of solder and have a functioning instrument. It's dangerous. And that was really the start of it. And, parts casters kind of started coming. I got to do one for my dad. I got to build a guitar for my brother. By that point, it was like, let me start building the body, but I still buy the neck already made. And so each project was kind of a push to start building one of the parts instead of buying it pre-built.
Okay.
Doing the finish as well. And so eventually it got to where I was, building the necks and building the bodies. And then, by that point it was still a hobby or kind of a passion project. I didn't want it to be a business at all. I just wanted to do it because I love doing it. But eventually seeing the benefits of making it a business and taking it seriously, getting the business license and the retail permit and all that stuff, you get the, there are perks to being, a business and having that, being a NAM member and, getting dealer pricing, getting plugged into the network, this amazing network that, as well of, other builders and other people in this community. And so that was kind of the start of, well, let's treat this like a brand and really get into what does an Equitz guitar look like and feel like and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. When would you say, like, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like when I first became aware of your brand and you'd been already doing basically everything in the build for a while. I think like the Rayburn I first played, which is I think still my profile picture, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. That red one, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
I have a weird thing about selfies. I don't really like taking them. I will occasionally. But I have no problem with other people's photos of me. Like, it's fine. Like, that doesn't weird me out. But if I've taken the picture of myself, I get weird. So I'm glad you were able to provide a picture of me out in the wild.
Did I take that picture, too?
Yeah, you took that picture. I was like, hey, that's not too bad. I'll use that one. I don't have to take a selfie.
We'll have to set up a photo shoot sometime with like lighting and a backdrop, and we'll get you like that soft focus filter and like a glamour shot.
Yeah,
that'll be a lot less awkward.
No, let's just go with the let's just keep it natural. Well, I'm just gonna roll with
keep
this
it candid.
one. Yeah, keep it candid. We'll just roll with this one until I don't look like that anymore, and then we'll try to sneak another one in.
Blake in the wild. Yeah,
that's a scary sounding thing. Out in the wild. But where was I going with that? Oh, yes. It seems like you already had the sort of Equitz identity, at least for the brand, fairly well established by that point, but it does seem like, correct me if I'm wrong, if it was a little bit early on relative to where we are now, I guess.
It was, and it's good that it seemed like it was already established. I think maybe in my head it definitely was established because still having a day job, my work time is pretty limited, and but you don't turn your head off. You keep thinking and designing stuff, and drawing things out, and there's so many notes I have from meetings that I had been in, and it was like a couple of notes about action items and synergy or whatever, but then it's like all these kind of doodles of different headstock shapes, or guitar names or pickup configurations. Like I'm making lists of things that I want to build and all that. So it's like your mind is always engaged, and so that helped. And honestly, it would be unfair to say so without giving credit to guys like Paul Roney, to Doug Cower, so many of these people that I've had a chance to, like, they were my heroes and my idols as I was getting into this, and seeing on social media the stuff that they were working on, and thinking, oh my goodness, it'd be great to just meet these guys. It'd be great to just see one of their guitars. And through the course of time, and NAMM shows and the social networks, and just kind of being welcomed into such a great community, like, these guys are still my mentors, and they're still like friends, and they've been really, really supportive and have helped in a lot of those kind of decisions, like branding decisions, or process, things like that. So there's really not a lot of credit I could take myself. It was really a product of the community, quite honestly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, the vibe and stuff that you've kind of established, it's not really derivative, but I can tell that it's inspired by some of the work that those guys have done, and others kind of, I don't know if it's like what you wanted to call like a new breed of builders, or they're not really new though at this point. I'm not sure. There just seems to be sort of a generational gap in between Doug and then maybe some of the older guys. I don't know.
Yeah, that's fair to say. Yeah, and it's very challenging, especially talking about design and branding and things like that, because there are some brands that have been very well established and are very familiar, and these classic shapes, but they're stuck, in my opinion. They're kind of stuck, like almost like a band, where it's like, no, don't give me your new direction. I just want to hear the hits.
Right.
And so some of those brands have been around for a long time, and really all they're really capable of doing to really stir up momentum is to do like a reissue, or drum roll, here's a new color, it's Sunburst, and it's like there's a lot of freedom in kind of not being part of that, but there's also a challenge, and this is where, again, guys like Doug and Paul really have a great grasp on the design of their guitars, where you see some familiarity in the lines and like the spirit of the design. So it feels like something you've seen before, but you haven't. It's still new. And that was really my direction, again, coming from a design background, treating this whole thing like one big design project. Like, what is the problem I'm trying to solve here? It's easy to just come up with something different. But in my career and in my education, design is about appeal, comprehension, and retention. It has to make sense. It has to be memorable. It has to be desirable. And so trying to achieve that with a guitar design kind of presents some unique challenges. So it was great to kind of bounce ideas off of those guys, and to get their support some of my kind of early stages with the 3 designs that I was, trying to build off of. So that's largely where, I'm using air quotes, the brand idea came from.
So with your background in design, I've heard this from a few different guys. Well, already there's kind of a design constraint with it has to be a functioning instrument. But do you place kind of, I don't want to say arbitrary, but somewhat like, okay, this is going to be an offset, or this is going to look, it's going to have these 3 factors in it. Like, I've heard that placing limits where there probably originally were none helps in the design process. Is that true, or does you even think like that?
Absolutely, yeah. And from what I've heard too, it's like that with songwriting too. Some people have recommended, like, if you're stuck, take 3 strings off your guitar, or, you know, try writing something with just 2 chords, or, you know, there's a lot to be said for just all of design in general when you're working within limitations. So what I wanted to do was, for all of the Southern California folks that are familiar with In-N-Out hamburgers, they've got 3 things on their menu. And it's, you know, hamburger, cheeseburger, and a double-double. They have the hidden menu, but when you have fewer options, there's also less space for regret. You know, if you're only picking between 3 things, then it's a lot easier to make up your mind. You're not worried about, well, should I go on with one of those other deals? Whereas if you have this whole wide range of, you know, if you're picking from 30 options, you know, then you got 29 different potential spaces for you to, like, second guess yourself. So creating boundaries was really good for me, at least. And so to start with, it was really important to just go with 3. It just seemed to make a lot of sense. And so then it was like, well, within those 3, let me create kind of a range, kind of a spectrum. And what I had started with was what's the Ashford, and that one was very organic. Like, I kind of freehand drew some lines. I had to go at it a few times, but over like, I put my plexiglass sheet over different templates, you know, Jazzmaster and Telecaster, Les Paul, and, you know, borrowing different lines from these things until it all kind of fit together in a way that I liked it. Mm-hmm. But it was very freehand, like very organic. And so that was a matter of just going for it. I was encouraged by a representative from Reverb, actually, one of the NAMM shows back when they were downstairs. It was like one of the first times they were there. May have been the first time, I don't know, but they were downstairs and just talking to this guy. And at the time I was doing like Les Paul style double cutaways and tellies and things like that. And what happens is people a lot of times will, you know, when they order something, it's largely based off of something they've already seen. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of the guitars that I was making were essentially what other people were asking for, and there wasn't a lot of my own direction. And quite honestly, that was something I was okay with, because there's not like this big artistic desire to be expressive or whatever. But, you know, he was telling me, he's like, well, what would you do if you wanted to make something for yourself and you had just free reign? What would you make? And so the Ashford is really a representation of that. And that became kind of the far end of the spectrum, because it's like semi-hollow, carved top. I mean, there are a lot of steps to that process. So then I thought, well, what would be ultra simple? What would be something that I could make without like a lot of bells and whistles and, you know, and steps? And starting with a Telly kind of as a platform, that's where the Rayburn came from. I mean, this Telly roots are really obvious, I think, and I don't really feel like there's a need to apologize for it. You know, it's inspired by the pretty brilliant design of a Telecaster, but, you know, trying to change some lines around and doing some things that I wanted to do for aesthetics and comfort and whatever, like, that's where the Rayburn came from. So then the decision was, well, I need something in between these two. An offset would be great. Something that is just kind of, you know, neither of these. And that was how the Devera came about. It was related to a project that somebody else requested of me. They sent me, you know, some examples of some different guitars. And so with a little bit of retrofit, that became the Devera. So then I had my 3 designs, and that was essentially it. Then all my energy after getting those 3 kind of like the look down, then it was like, well, I need to build these. They need to be like a 3-dimensional physical thing that somebody can hold and play and give me some feedback on. And then all my energy went into building them and trying to get them out there. Mm-hmm. And I think at that New Neighbor booth there was a Devera and at least one Rayburn. I think it was definitely those 2. I'm not sure if I had a third one there or not.
There was a third one there, but I think it was at a different booth, if I remember correctly. I don't remember what booth that was. But not that it really matters. But
no.
But the Rayburn, to me, I don't know. This is just me theorizing things. It almost looks like, yes, there's definitely some telly in there, I don't know if I'm projecting this or if this is a real thing. I see a little bit of old Epiphone in that guitar as well, so which I love. It's just I've always loved that thing. I think that was the first one I played, and then I played Leon's, of course, with the fuzz in, which is just marvelous. And I don't know. One thing that I've always kind of noted is I really like your necks. And then maybe you've changed since then, but I remember asking you like, what does this measure at? Because I don't really know. I just know if I pick up a guitar and I like how it feels.
Right.
I've never actually measured a neck, which some people think I'm.
It's probably better if you don't. Yeah.
I mean, I kind of know some stuff just because I know it. I know what this one is, whatever. But I don't actually know neck measurements. I just know if I like them or if I don't.
Sure. Well, neck measurements have kind of been an evolution for me as well. The first neck that I ever made, I just said, let's do this. Let's go for it. If I screw it up, then I screw it up. But when I went at it, it was like ultra conservative. So it ended up being a real heavy neck. And I didn't notice until I put the strings on it. And I was like, oh man, this thing's a baseball bat. But the guitar was done, and it was like, well, when I get the time, I'll go back and shave some more off and fix it. But the more I played it, the more I enjoyed it. And I thought, dang, there's less fatigue. And it's not like I'm some shredder or anything like that. It's not like the guitar needs to get out of my way at all. There's a lot of work I need to do to where the guitar is what's holding me back, not my own inability. But what I found is that just playing for a long time, we get to sit in sometimes with my dad's. My dad still plays with this band that he's been playing with since he was in junior high. So we'll play some cover band kind of gigs at a local restaurant. So we play it all night, and playing it at church and things like that, and just my own practice, and just realizing wow, this actually feels good. So kind of breaking down the walls of a heavy neck, and then. After a while, making a few more necks, then I got into well, let me try slimming this down, because some people, when you ask them right off the bat, well, what kind of neck do you want? Well, I like a real slim neck. It's all right, that's cool. So I needed to be able to do that. I couldn't just rest on the idea of playing it, safe with a heavier neck. I wanted to really see what I could get away with. And so some of them have much slimmer necks. And I do measure them, but it's not always a matter of reaching the same measurements each time. Quite a bit of it is done by feel. And so I think at this point I've settled kind of in the middle of that. Like that red one that you're talking about, that's got a gigantic neck on it.
I loved it.
Because that's actually... Me too. Yeah. That one was made for August of Otis Amps. And what he asked for specifically was a real heavy neck. And so it was cool, let's do this. And what I made for him, since the first couple frets were so, it was so heavy there, I thought, well, let me kind of keep the same thickness all the way through. And as it turns out, I found that was an idea that Paul Roney had already been doing for a while, was this kind of uniform thickness. And I was like, okay, there's yet another reason why Paul Roney's genius. And so kind of hearing him talk about it, it's well, that would be a perfect solution for this neck that I want to do. And so that's what I did. And I believe the actual numbers, I think that one is about 0.9 inches or whatever, which is pretty robust for a neck. So that's what I would consider on the heavy end of necks that I've made. On Leon's, the one you're talking about, that's a bit slimmer, but not by much. But really, I think Paul was onto something there with that whole, I think uniform thickness.
Yeah,
idea.
he told me just to imagine it as a half a tube, just straight.
Right. But it's interesting because it gets wider, as it obviously progresses down. So the feel of it starts to feel a bit, it feels slimmer and more normal, because there's a junky, Strat copy generic neck that I have here hanging up in the garage that I kind of reference every now and then if I'm just curious, like, wait, what is the standard like? So anyway, starting to ramble about nonsense numbers and whatnot, but yeah, that's kind of the basis. And then a lot of it, since each one is done, individually by hand, I'll track to those measurements. I have a contour gauge. I have different, like, after setting the contours, and I'll trace them onto a paper and just kind of keep a reference of different necks that I've made, just so that I know kind of what people are referring to. If they're like, oh, I love the neck on Leon's, it's like, okay, well, I have all three, or sometimes it's more than that. Sometimes it's 5 different measurements, from the first all the way down to the 12th fret, different contour measurements and stuff. But so keep that as a reference. But there's a weird kind of abstract, like artsy fartsy mindset of just kind of letting the neck become what it wants to be. Sometimes just the way that a certain piece of wood will be, if there's a grain that's kind of difficult, maybe you hit a spot that's a little bit rough and you need to take a little bit more off. Some necks end up being just a little bit thinner, or sometimes it's kind of heavy, and it's like, what, this thing's done, this feels fantastic like this, and I'm just going to leave it. One neck that I did for a friend of mine, he has an SG, and his name's Brian. He's a really cool guy, and he had this SG, and he was being very cool. He asked me to build him a guitar. And so we talked a bit about it. And it's like, I can match the dimensions of your SG, but it's not going to feel the same just because it's on a different guitar. The finish on the back of the neck, the weight of the body, all these things really affect the feel of it. So when it comes to some sort of like quantifiable, measurement thing, it's a little bit sticky to say, like, yes, it's always, this and this and this is like some formula for the perfect neck. There's a lot of it's done by feel and by circumstance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I've talked about this on the show before too, that I generally prefer a bigger neck, and if you looked at me, you would say I probably needed a slim neck because I got 2-inch long fingers. but for some reason, I've always, like, ever since I first picked up an old Junior, it was just like, oh yeah, this just feels better to me. And it was like a little bit of work at first, just to get used to it, because I was used to a pretty slim neck on my Les Paul I've had forever. It's like the 60s taper, and right. I still like that, but if you still had to give me one to pick between, it would be the bigger, beefier one. And I don't know why, but it's just like you say, I don't get fatigued when I play those nearly as much as with a slimmer neck. I just like it.
Right. And, so many of the elements of a guitar, in my mind, at least, this is just opinion, but when they base like what makes a good guitar on, like, well, it's a glued neck versus a bolt neck, or it's this kind of hardware versus that, or it's mahogany versus alder. All these things are really subjective, in my opinion, and what really makes a guitar feel good when you pick it up and all this stuff is how those all work together. So it's like, if it were a chunky neck, but the body just it didn't balance with the neck, then it still wouldn't be right. So it's a matter of getting the whole thing to work together as a unit, and making sure that the proportions, that everything just feels good. It's so subjective. It really comes down to feel. You have to just hold the thing and see, like, what it sounds so silly and like superstitious, but it's like, what is this thing like wanting to be? Does it want to be heavy? Does it want to be light? Does it want to, I don't know, respond a certain way? And to me, that just sounds ridiculous. But in the process of making one, I mean, that's so much of how it goes. You can measure it so far, but sometimes you just have to make some adjustments.
Well, I used to say this or reference this a lot on older episodes, so people may have heard it before. But I read a discussion on forums a long time ago, and I don't remember which one it was. It seems like it was a Telecaster forum thing, but it was talking about tone woods. And, I'm a little bit lukewarm on that subject. I'm like, I don't know. I've played ones made out of, particle board that sounded great. So it's like, and I played ones made out of the finest materials quote unquote available, and it was not good. So, but the guy, and I wish I could remember where I seen it or what the guy's username was, but he said a luthier told him one time that some trees grow up and they want to be a guitar, and some trees grow up and they want to be a park bench, and there's nothing you're going to do to get it to be what it doesn't want to be. And that's always stuck with me, and because I found it to be true. Like, there's guitars for me that are objectively great, but when I picked it up and played it, it was like, pass.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But on paper, I should have loved it.
Yeah.
I should have loved it.
Exactly. And honestly, that terrifies me because, so much of what I'm doing is not as easily quantifiable. It's like, it's always going to be this weight, and it's always going to be exactly these dimensions. It's like, as much as you love food, and I love food too, as much as we love food, it's like trying to get the right seasonings. You can't just blame a meal on, well, I used the wrong peppercorns. It's like there's so many other factors that go into how it was made and the other ingredients, and what you have as like the base, and what's supposed to be like the highlight, and what adds some sort of contrast, either flavor or visual or whatever. It's you can't, like, in terms of a meal, like, you can't just take everything that's awesome and drop it all into the plate. It's going to be too rich, and then those things, like, you're not really tasting the combination of the things. It's more of this competition for energy. And I guess that comes back to the design mentality too. Some of the best designs are really about simplicity and like we were saying before, limitations. It's the way that all the components work together in the space that is given. And things cannot be competing for attention. There needs to be some sort of a hierarchy set of, like, where do you want somebody's attention to go first, and then how do you want it to travel down. So anyway, in regards to tone wood, it's just like any of those other arguments in my mind that maybe I don't know anything, but what I would say is, yes, mahogany sounds different than alder, and it sounds different than pine, but none of them sound bad. In my opinion, they just sound different. And in the end, like, how discernible is that difference? How significant is it? And, I'm happy to build a guitar out of mahogany or alder, whatever somebody wants, based on the weight or the feel. One of the guitars that I made when I was starting out and just experimenting on building bodies, it was made out of a 2x10 from Home Depot, just some crummy Douglas fir that actually, it was in my garage because I was using it as like a scaffolding that I had stretched over a banister to paint with. And that is like the most resonant guitar that I have. I mean, it's super lightweight. It's like super loud acoustically. It sounds, at first I thought it sounded pretty crummy, like on its own, but trying it at a gig, it actually projects in a mix really, really well. There's another guitar I made that's like a piece of mahogany. It weighs like a ton, and it is like the most resonant thing. It's almost like it's got too much sustain. Like some songs that we've played where it's like you have to like hit a chord and let it sustain out. There were times I had to reach down and turn my volume down because it wouldn't decay fast enough. And the neck is held in with screws. So, it's a maple neck with screws. It's not bolted in. I mean, it's not glued in. So, not to say that those arguments are irrelevant or unfounded, but when it comes down to it, like, there are so many other factors that play into it. So it's not just that it's a mahogany guitar or it's an alder guitar. It's like, well, what kind of hardware are you using? How is the thing built? There's so many other factors to consider.
Well, you brought up the neck joint a couple times, and I've always thought that was a really interesting argument, or at least point of debate, is the bolt versus glued. I don't care, first of all, which one is which. It's whatever that guitar needs it to be. I understand that each one has its own advantages and disadvantages, but like, as far as strength goes, like, I've heard that, like, the glued in neck is so much stronger. I go back to a time when I was a teenager, and I don't know how many people have actually tried to smash a guitar before, but I found that bolt necks hold up just fine when I'm literally slamming the guitar into a giant boulder, trying to smash it. And was just an old cheap guitar that actually had been. It was an old Epiphone, I think. So if I'm remembering correctly, I think it was an old a cheap Epiphone with a bolt neck, and a friend of mine had come home and somebody had knocked his guitar over and the headstock was busted off. So we glued it back together and smashed it for like this little party we were playing. Like we're like, this will be funny if we smash the guitar, but it was already broken, so nobody get too mad at me. But yeah, it was hard. Then I'll tell you, the neck joint didn't fail. That was the part that did not fail.
Right.
So I'm very confident in the strength of a bolt-on neck, or at least a properly designed one.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the key right there. You said a properly designed one. When I was doing some of those kind of like double cutaway Les Paul styles, it was essentially like a mortise and tenon, neck joint, like what would normally be glued, but my choice was to put them in with screws. For several reasons, because first of all, I'm in a very small space. My quote unquote shop is really, a 1-car garage, and or a single car space where the garage. And so like when it comes time to spraying them or even just in the build process, it's nice to have them as two separate units so that like while the lacquer's curing on the body, I can be doing the fretwork on the neck. Also, if anything later on down the road, if somebody wanted it like refretted or anything like that, they could take the neck off and it would be a lot easier for them to ship. So the idea of like permanently coupling the two elements made me a little nervous. Also, maple is really, in my mind, it's really my favorite to work with for a neck. Just because you can leave it relatively unfinished. You can just oil it or just put a light finish on it. And it's very stable from what I've seen. It's really sturdy. And so it's like, okay, so let me just use maple necks. And then with the two different finish options, it just makes so much more sense for my intended purposes to just, use screws in the thing. And if it's made well, if the joint fits really tight and it's all coupled together, again, there's so many other components to consider, like you could plug this into a garbage amp and then anything is irrelevant as far as the guitar is concerned. But that's one of the things that I really stick to. Some people have insisted like, well, I need it to be glued in joint for the sustain. And it's like, okay, well, I'm only going to do bolt neck. But there was this guy that I got to work with. He had an actual 60, I think it was like 63, 64 Strat. The thing was amazing. And the gap around the neck, like in the pocket, like you could slide a nickel down the, all aspects of the thing. It didn't even fit tightly. And that guitar just sang, man. So, okay, maybe it's the age of the wood at the cellular level that is, maybe it's the way that the nitro lacquer is shrunken and evaporated and worn down over time. Like there's so many factors, but it was nothing to do with the neck. And, when you listen to certain recordings, people, there are some recordings that people would swear is one guitar or another. And I mean, how many times have you listened to like your favorite guitar track and be like, those screws are really holding them back? Or you're sitting in the back of a bar and this, or a club and this band is wailing away. And it's like, if they would have glued that neck in, this guy would have sounded a lot better. Mm-hmm. So
every time,
no criticism, no criticism to the builders that want to glue in their necks. I fully support that. I think it's great. And if they have the means and it's as far as their process is concerned and that's the direction they want to go, great, go for it. So I'm not saying it's wrong, but as far as for my purposes and my process and, the circumstances that I'm in, they're going to be bolts and necks.
Well, and then there's, we're talking about the joint themselves and like, I didn't even think about until I started talking to some of you guys. Like, I was just thinking, Fender, 4-bolt or 3-bolt or whatever neck, it's just a flat thing. You stick it in there, bolt it on. That's the end of the story. I didn't even think about the wide variety of ways there is to do that. And, we've, plugged Paul a lot on this show, but like the way he did the little stinker necks with the 2-bolt. I think it was a 2-bolt, wasn't it? Am I correct on that? I haven't seen one in so long. It might have just been one. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that I might be speaking out of turn. I think it might have even been one. And then I looked at my millimetric. The thing's almost a neck through, but technically a bolt neck. And so that's just a part of building that I never even really considered until started talking to some of you guys. So it's kind of an interesting. It just shows how much thought goes into some of these instruments, I guess. That's what I'm getting at.
Right. And in my mind, that's something that could be chalked up to, how saturated the market is. Some people would complain about that, use it as a criticism. And it's like, there's a lot of freedom in that because, there are other people out there making set neck, maybe like Gibson style format, or, you can go get another T style or an S style or a JM style guitar from this other builder. Like, it seems like there's a lot to choose from out there. So it's not really incumbent on me to cover the whole spectrum. It feels like I actually have more freedom to choose the way that I want to build them. And as long as I have a reason for it, which again goes back to the design background about not making arbitrary decisions. It's like for pretty much anything in my guitars, at least, there's a reason why it is that way. And so it's great if somebody really does not want one of my guitars because it doesn't have a glued joint, that's okay. I'd be happy to refer them over to other builders because, the builders are great. We have a great community. And from what I've seen, for the most part, we kind of look out for each other. And to me, what's more important is that people are supporting the builders, there's so many guys out there that care so passionately about what they're doing, and they're just amazing artists and craftspeople. So in my mind, it's more important just to push the community. It's like, maybe I'm not the right builder for you, but here's someone who is. You want something more retro. You want something more aggressive or more modern or whatever. There are a lot of these great little, groups that we're all in, and we can communicate with each other, and it's great. So if somebody really had an issue with something that I was building, then it would feel really good to steer their business towards one of my friends.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's part of what makes this whole thing fun is the community aspect of this. Like, it's whether you're a builder, a customer, nerd, whatever. Like, it's just cool to be,
We're all nerds.
We are. We are 100%. It's so great that my wife is, she knows I'm a super geek and like super not cool, and that's fine. But what is really funny is like she's been more and more exposed to more guys like me. And I'm like, I constantly get to be like, see, it's not just me. We're all like this. Like, I can't remember if I've told this story on the podcast or not, but through a lot of awesome circumstances and a big shout out to Grant Wilson from Big Ear NYC, I found myself giving some pedals to one of my favorite artists, or two of my favorite guys, Brian Fallon and Ian Perkins, which they do Gaslight Anthem and a variety of other things. So I was like okay. At the show, we were planning on going to the show anyway. My wife's a huge fan. I'm a big fan. And I had some pedals to give to them because I got hooked up, and I gave it to them, and they said, "Oh yeah, after the show, shoot me a message, and Brian would love to talk to you for a minute." So roundabout story is, after the show, my wife and I ended up on the tour bus for like 45 minutes or an hour, and we got done and left, and she's like, "How do you do this? Like, they're just like you." We're sitting there obsessing of how, Pelham Blue fades to that wonderful green over time, and like talking about different fuzz pedals we could have went all night. Like, and it was just like, we better go. We're, imposed enough, and they were super nice. And it was just like really interesting just to be sitting there kind of gear geeking with one of my favorite artists. So, but my wife was just blown away, right. Well, like, they're just like you,
everybody's a nerd for something, and it's just, we've just found each other in this community. But no matter what, people are nerds for sports. People are nerds for politics. People are nerds for, TV and movies. Like, everybody's a nerd. Let's just get over that and embrace it and celebrate our nerdiness.
It's true.
Right?
I mean, have you ever met somebody? I know of a few people, but it's very rare in my experience. There's not that many people who don't have a thing that gets them excited. Like, everyone has something that they're into, even if they don't think of it as a nerdy hobby or whatever. But like, if you're really into NASCAR, I don't know, in my opinion, right, you got to be really into that to enjoy watching it, because I don't. Just like
frankly, yeah, it would make me more cautious to meet somebody who wasn't a nerd for something.
Yeah, it's like, do you not like anything? Like, I have met a person or two in my day that they're just like, they don't really like anything, and it's it's like a head scratcher to me. I'm like, wow.
Yeah, it's kind of sad.
Yeah, and it makes you think that and I'm not criticizing them at all. That's their life, but it just is. It makes you kind of sit back and wonder, maybe you just haven't tried enough stuff, because there's a lot of cool things in this world, like really cool things.
Right. Well, and that's where, it's great about just our little sphere of podcasts and Facebook groups and all this, because coming from a background as a drummer, like having to being the drummer is never fun. You're like the first person there, the last one to leave, because you got all this gear to set up. Everyone's out hanging out with their friends and, having fun before and after the show, but you're the one like, unscrewing your cymbals and making sure your snare's at the right angle and all this kind of stuff. So when I got into guitar playing, it was like minimalist. Like, let me walk in with an amp and a guitar and be done. So the whole effects pedal thing, in my mind, it's like this world of like almost like baseball cards where people will kind of like buy and sell them and trade them, collect them, and got it, need it, got it kind of thing. And I didn't understand it. Like, again, my really good friend Brian, he probably still is on this amazing like amp journey, and he'd be going through these different amps and these different pedals, and everything he played sounded awesome, and they all sounded different, but they all sounded awesome. And he knew it, and I knew it. Like, we had a lot of fun kind of joking with each other, but getting into pedals was difficult for me. But what helped was shows like yours, like Chasing Tone, all these where you get to hear like a good explanation of what is actually happening with these pedals and some comparisons and what it means, what the different, the terminology, breaking down hard clipping and soft clipping and all this kind of stuff. Because in my mind, all my attention was on the guitar itself. But it helped kind of inform where I was coming from. Like if somebody wants to order a guitar, there's a lot of conversation that happens. And what I want to know is like, what kind of music do you like? What are you going to be plugging this into? Are you the type of person that plugs straight into your amp, or are you running this through a whole bunch of pedals? Because that's going to, make some impact on the decisions for the way that it's built and designed and all that. But knowing what it means, if someone says, yeah, I go straight into a Helix, or, I've got an AC-15 and I like, germanium style fuzzes. It's like kind of building an understanding of that has really helped me out. And on top of that, like getting linked up with guys like Co and Leon in that whole Fuzz Rayburn project. Fuzz pedals is something that I don't completely understand, but the pedals that I have are incredible. I've got the Tone Mob, Model 1.
Oh, that's right. You did get one of those.
I got a Pelotar. I got a yes. Horse. That's actually the first fuzz pedal I bought. Because
I forgot about that.
Not knowing anything about...
No, I mean, I just forgot. Like, I was like, now I'm remembering having this. Like, oh yeah, Kevin, that was way back. Like that was a couple, like almost 2 years ago, wasn't it? Something. Anyway, that
probably, yeah. Whenever you did that with Solid Gold, it was the second run. It was the one that looks like RoboCop. It's got that kind of like aluminum.
Yeah. That was your first fuzz, though. Whoa.
Because. Not knowing, well, which way do I want to go? Do I want to go like super gated Velcro-y fuzz, or do I want that whole woolly, woofy kind of like thick thing? And that the way that it was, and thanks to Jalen or Jay for crying out loud, that guy, he could just do anything and sell it. What a wonderful guy he is. But his demo of that pedal, I was like, okay, that's it. I got to get one of these. And by that point, it was too late. And then you did the reissue or the second release or whatever. And I was like, not going to miss this one. So I was like, boom, let's do this. And yeah, that's a rad pedal. And then, so that was like my introduction to fuzz, and was like, oh, hey, this is a lot of fun, plugging this in, making some noise and all that. And then getting to know Co, with his roadshow, and we meet up at events and things like that. And we all know who doesn't know Co? I mean, come on, he's his own adjective. Like, the guy's amazing.
Love
and
Co.
So, and he's like we love Co. He's like the idea guy. He's just throwing ideas at me all the time, and they're great ideas. And so he had this idea to do hey, what if we put fuzz inside a guitar? And knowing, there's ones that I've seen, I think Vox and other back in the day, and to my ear, like, they just sounded pretty crummy. And so I told him, like, well, it's a great idea, but if we do it, it's got to be like a good fuzz. And he goes, well, I know Leon. And at the time, I mean, this is when the Pelotar was, like, and it had already been going for like a whole year, and everybody's talking about the Pelotar. I'm like, whoa, Leon. so Co, like, introduced us, and then I got to meet Leon and work with Leon, and you already know, he's such an amazing guy. Mm-hmm. And so that's what made that guitar, that the limited run. We still have a few left in the limited run, but that's what made that project so special. Was it's not just about a pedal. It's not just about a fuzz sound, but it's about this like camaraderie, this friendship, like getting to collaborate with people, and not just be like, stuck in my own little sphere, but like taking ideas and kind of kicking them back and forth and landing on something. We're all darn proud of those fuzz Rayburns, and it was so much fun. It was even more fun than the guitar itself, was the process in coming up with that guitar. And so that's, I don't know how we got on this tangent. Sorry, my fault. But
that's what we do.
The idea of breaking out of just getting stuck in the like one lane of like guitars, but like starting to try to learn the language of amps and effects, and those are instruments as well, in my opinion. The way that you chain them all together. So, I guess maybe it's a long-winded thank you for doing your show and hearing the different builders and the way that they the same thing that I'm trying to do with my guitars, other people are doing with their amps and effects. And so this, Co was just over here the other day, and he's like, for someone who's not a pedal guy, you got a lot of really nice pedals. It's like, they're all like, they were either gifts, of like from really good people, or they're people that I've met that make pedals. And each pedal is like special to me because, they represent a project or a friendship, or, it was something that I, was part of a trade or whatever. So it's kind of ironic. Here's this, minimalist drummer guy that, is not quite a pedal geek, but trying to at least pretend like I belong with the pedal geeks. And trying very hard to speak the language of the pedal geeks.
It's almost like by association, you've just acquired them, regardless of whether that's your main thing or not. But because 3/4 of the people you associate with on the internet are pedal nerds, it's like by osmosis you've become you can't get too close to the community without picking up a few gems. It seems like it's just gonna happen most likely.
Yep.
Yep. I mean, I know.
Definitely.
I'm hopelessly addicted to them, and yeah. Well, that's a story for another day. I guess everyone already knows my deal. So, but one thing I do want to talk about before we get too far away from actual subject matter, that we stayed amazingly on the topic of guitars this whole time. This is a cool. A unique episode for the Tone Mob podcast. But. So I seen that commercial you posted today that you were in for Indian motorcycles, and I just thought that was one of the coolest things. I don't know why it was so cool, but it was so cool. How did that happen?
Well, what I would say for me, what makes it so cool is that the concept for the commercial was presented to me early on, and they wanted, and you see the description, they're talking about the real life makers. And so it's bizarre that I got in there, but their angle was, to show craftspeople kind of in their environments and make a parallel to what they're doing. And it feels nice and it feels encouraging. If any guitar builder, any other one other than me, like I still would have been just as excited about it, because seeing guitar making represented in a context like that, as in like as a craft, it's something that, could be equated to a high-end motorcycle or anything else, was just really, I don't know, validating, I guess. But the way that the commercial came about is, my uncle is an actor, and he's been in TV shows and all this. His name's Dwight. He's a really, really cool guy. He's been so encouraging, so supportive of what I'm doing. So somehow he was talking to a casting agent and found out that they were looking for craftspeople, specifically guitar maker, for this upcoming commercial. And he said, well, you got to talk to my nephew, Kevin. And so through my website, this casting agent sent me an email saying, hey, we're looking for guitar makers. If you want to audition, then you can come on out to Hollywood, which for me is like, it's about at least an hour and a half drive. Or you can send in a video if you want. So I was like, what would it hurt? Like, this sounds like a lot of fun. Let me do this. And so I set up my cameras in the garage and just recorded a quick, she said 30 to 45 seconds. All we want to do is see your hands working, and if you could just kind of introduce yourself. So that's exactly what I gave them, and sent it off. And then in a couple of days, the whole thing happened in less than 2 weeks. So a couple of days later, she tells me, oh, this is great. We'd like you to come in for a callback. And this, you need to actually come to, the place in Hollywood. So it's like, wow, this is crazy. So let's just do this thing. So, my wife and I drove out there, and, so she went off to like a little coffee shop, waiting for me. And, so we're out in Hollywood, wherever. And it's just kind of like you see in the different, like in movies or TV, when somebody goes to like an audition or a casting call, where like you're in the waiting area and there are people coming in, and it's like, okay, this person's obviously a tattoo artist. And, here's somebody that's like, some guy was full on carrying like a gas tank from a motorcycle. And because they'd asked me to bring in a guitar and some tools, and I'm sure that they asked the other craftspeople the same thing. There were like leather workers and, all these people. And I was like, dang, this is really interesting. And there were a couple of the guitar makers there. One that I recognized, and I don't really know if I should say who, but it was like, dude, if this guy's in this commercial, that's going to be a rad commercial. And since he's here and he's more well known than I am, then there's no way I'm getting this gig. But I'm here. I'm going to have fun with it. So whatever. And, so they're bringing people in one by one, and they're not telling us a whole lot. They're just saying, all right, when you get in there, they're going to ask you, there's going to be a video camera there. They're just going to want you right off to look in the camera and say your name, just so they have a reference of who you are. So I walk in this room, there's the camera there. There are people, there are a handful of people. There's a little table over to the side. I'm carrying like one of those double gig bags. I have that red guitar that you were holding. And then actually it's the one that I'm working on for, it was either the one for Paul Pennington or the one for Cole Duke, but I had another Rayburn that was kind of in the works, and a bunch of my tools. And so I'm slugging this. It was all heavy because of all the guitars and tools. And so I'm a bit nervous, and you just kind of, this like whirlwind. So they're like, go ahead, set your stuff down here. We need you to look in the camera. We need you to say your name. And I'm like, in my head, don't screw up, do this and this. So a guy walks up to me, and he's got glasses and a beard, and he goes, hi, I'm Ewan. And I said, oh, okay, hi, Ewan. And I shake his hand. And in my head, I'm like, Ewan, like Ewan McGregor. And I look up, and it's Ewan McGregor. As in Obi-Wan Kenobi, because he's a motorcycle enthusiast. And he did this like these documentaries that I'd watched a long time ago and just really enjoyed, where he rides all the way around basically the earth on a motorcycle. And the other one, he goes like from north to south. And I'm like, oh my gosh, be cool. Don't be an idiot. And so they have me take out the guitars and really just kind of go through kind of the motions that I was doing in my little demo video, where I was just kind of shaping a neck. And so I was explaining my process, and here's, here's Ewan McGregor crouching down, holding up his hands like a frame. And he's, okay, yeah, so we could come in this way and this way. And I'm just like freaking out because, to be fair, he's like the nicest guy in the world. He didn't introduce himself as like, hey, I'm Ewan McGregor, and by the way, I was Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Right.
he was just Ewan, you know, just so gracious and so nice. I can't say enough of good stuff about him. So anyway, you know, they have me kind of go through the thing, ask me some questions. We're chatting a little bit. He shakes my hand. Thank you so much for bringing us down, for coming in. And I walk out the door and I was like, what the heck just happened? You know? Just totally reeling. So I tell my wife, she's like, no way. So we drive home, and in my head, I'm thinking, wow, that was it. That was the experience. And I'm done. You know, there's no way I got the gig anyway, but hey, I got to meet, you know, you, and I got to do like an audition like actors do and all this stuff. So I think it might've been later that day or the next day or something like that. I get a phone call. They're like, hey, you got the part. You got to come in for wardrobe on this day. And we're going to be shooting this other day on this weekend. And it was like, boom, 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 boom. So yeah, had to go back all the way back there, you know, for wardrobe. Got to talk to Ewan again. And then we filmed in this awesome warehouse. You can kind of tell from the footage that, you know, we're in this amazing warehouse, and the art director that was doing the set design had contacted me kind of in that whole in-between period and said, well, we want to make this as authentic as possible. So, you know, can you send us some pictures of some of the tools and some of your workspace so that we can, you know, work off of? So I sent her pictures and she's like, this is great. Could we borrow some of this stuff? Do you have any finished guitars that you want to have in there? And it's like, are you kidding me? Of course I do. So the guitars in the background, it's a very quick clip, but the guitars in the background, that's like the red Rayburn that you were holding. There's my black Ashford. There's also the Shoreline Gold Fuzz Rayburn. It's a little hard to see that one. And they had like my drill press. What was really cool is my uncle Frank, he's a big inspiration to me. And unfortunately he passed away a few years ago, but he was a woodworker and just an amazing craftsman. And he taught me a lot, and I got to inherit one of his toolboxes. But he also was a motorcycle guy, and he had an Indian motorcycle.
Oh wow,
so
that's awesome.
So I told them that, and they loved, you know, even my new buddy Ewan, he loved the idea. He's like, okay, well, let's make sure that's in the shot. So they were very cool about stuff like that. So if you pause it, you'll see a brown toolbox behind me. That was my Uncle Frank's. And so yeah, they set up this shop, which was like in this awesome abandoned warehouse, but it was super cool. And the scenes in the commercial, there's a tattoo parlor, there's a saddle maker. Those were all like almost next door to each other, just in this warehouse.
Oh, okay.
Like it was all, I mean, at least a lot of the stuff that I was a part of was all done at the same time and place. And then, yeah, like I said, it was just a whirlwind from there. It was cool because they just wanted me to be me. They didn't make me dress up like anything else. They gave me that shirt that I was wearing to wear, but otherwise, like, they didn't make me put on glasses or an apron or, you know, do anything that wasn't like me. And they had me just do that carving like you see in the commercial. They just had me do that over and over, and they did a few different shots. Ewan, of course, was very, very gracious, you know, making sure that I was comfortable, that I, you know, felt like I was doing it right. And he gave me a compliment on my work and shook my hand enthusiastically. And then they were off to shoot the next thing. And then it was over. And I was like standing in this like amazing, and there's so much more to that little shop that's not in the commercial, but it was really, really beautiful and just charming in its own way. And someday I'm going to recreate that, and that will be my actual workshop.
Nice.
But that was it. And so yeah, it finally was, you know, it was, I just found it, you know, they let me know that I'd made the final cut and that the final one was going to be available pretty soon. But this morning I just checked on YouTube and it was there. So I was like, what? So of course I had to like share the living crap out of it. And everybody, by the time this podcast airs, they're probably going to be so sick of seeing it. And, you know, hey, whatever.
I had to share it too. I was like,
yeah, you did. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, that's.
I was like, oh, this is so cool. I mean, I've always wanted a motorcycle like that, so I probably won't ever get one.
Oh, they are the coolest motorcycles. Yeah, well, and the whole Ewan McGregor thing was like, I wasn't saying anything about that because they didn't say that in the audition, you know, like leading up to the audition until you're actually there. And I'm sure there was like some confidentiality and stuff, but the only reason I'm saying is because I saw like the production company that made it, they'd been tweeting that, oh, Ewan McGregor's directorial, commercial thing here. And they posted the director's cut of the commercial. And then Indian Motorcycles retweeted that tweet. I'm like, okay, this is public. It's all been tweeted,
Right.
So here I go. I'm just going to start shouting it from the rafters. So yeah, a TV commercial about motorcycles with Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I got to be a guitar maker. Like it's still ridiculous to even
Kevin Equitz plays Kevin Equitz. It's one of them scenes. That's so cool.
How weird is that?
It's so cool. That's amazing. That is awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that story a little more in depth. I was really curious how that all came about, because that almost seems like, because it happened so fast. Like if that happened to me and it didn't happen that fast, I'm like, guys, guess what happened today?
Yeah.
Like before the commercial came out, I'm just surprised that they were able to turn and burn on it that fast. That's actually really impressive.
Yeah, it was hard not to talk about.
That's amazing.
But being like secretive and all that, it's tough for me. Like there are a lot of different builders, and everybody's got like some secret project they're working on and the next big thing, and it's hard to keep that a secret. So sitting on this was difficult, and it's like now that it's out there, I can finally talk about it.
Oh, dude, story of my life. I'm
Yeah. Well, yeah, you've always got something in the fire, don't you? So yeah, that's cool.
There's just so many things. It's amazing. I'm not complaining, but I'm like you. I like want to tell people like this is a rad thing that's happening. But there's so much that I get. I've been told by a couple different builders that I'm like the pedal therapist or something. Like some people like to call up and just talk through problems sometimes, which is totally fine. Like I not technical ones, more just like, oh, I'm having this problem and I don't know who else to talk to about it. I'm like, well, that's fine. That's what I do is talk. So let's talk. And so I through that, I get a lot of kind of, oh yeah, don't say anything. That's not ready. And I'm like, oh, that's so cool. I gotta keep quiet now. But
well, yeah, like so many of these people too. You're like so well connected. That's got to be the toughest thing, because people want to get your input and your feedback, and that's important. But then it's hard to not want to share that afterwards.
It is. I've gotten a lot better at it, and sometimes I feel like a jerk when I'm like, I know what that is, but I can't tell you. And I do it anyway because I'm not that nice. But it's actually totally due to this podcast, because like through doing this, as like we have to talk a little bit, at least beforehand. And so it's like we have to have some sort of open line of communication. So with all the guests that, have came on, obviously that's just a natural kind of byproduct. And, you sit and talk to somebody for an hour or so, you get a pretty good feel if you want to talk to them again or not, and whether you like talking to them or not. And it just becomes kind of, it's totally a natural byproduct of doing the show, which I'm very happy about. It's just an interesting position to be in.
Well, what's great about your show too is that you've got that insider angle, but you don't like manufacture hype. You don't. It's not cheesy or artificial. It's like if you're excited about something, if you, Blake Weiland, are excited about something, it's legitimately exciting, and that's what makes it fun for me to watch. And it's tough because, well, like in my case, like my marketing budget is zero essentially, and but like you're able to do a lot of marketing just kind of through, all your networking, your conversations, and kind of teasing stuff out. And then when you get to announce something, it's fun to watch. Like it's really cool to see the excitement. And, like I said, the fuzz pedal I got, like if I could buy every pedal that you've collaborated on, I would, because I want to, because it's about the collaboration as well. Like you've worked with some pretty amazing people, and it's so cool to be a part of that, even if it's just a matter of buying a pedal. You still feel like you're buying into the brand and buying into the community, and like you're part of the partnership. Yeah,
and I'm super thankful for everyone that's taken a chance and gotten involved with doing these projects with me, because it is it's a risk. It's not they've all went really well so far, but nothing lasts forever. You know, like I'm still like, just like you'd think that somebody like, I don't know, you'd think like somebody like Brian Wampler, like you'd think he'd just be like not worried about a product launch, right? At this point. But that's not the case. Right. Everyone's waiting for the flop. You know, like those things do happen eventually. And not that I think Brian's going to experience that at all, but like there's a reason why on launch day he's nervous, just like anybody who goes through a lot of effort to, you know, put something out there. It's nerve-wracking if nobody likes it, and sometimes nobody likes it. That's just is what it is, and not really anything you can do about it except throw it at the wall and see what sticks.
Right, and that's got to be a lot of pressure because, you know, in that case, you're actually launching something. You've already done all your R&D and all that, and you put so much work into it before anyone else knows about it. That makes a lot of sense. Like it's something that for somebody like me, it's I don't know, it's not really something I have to worry about so much. Like there's a new design I have in the works, but we can talk about it if you want, but like,
go for it.
When it comes out, like there's not going to be like some big launch, like, okay, nobody knew about this and then here it is, you know, because my like social media feed and, you know, conversations in the groups, like that is my marketing because all I have to market is just myself and my guitars, you know. It's not like I can really, nor do I want to like generate any hype, like, you know. And it's cool for the people who can do that. I really admire that. But like in my case, I really want to bring people in early on so that they can kind of be a part of the development as well. Mm-hmm. So yeah, like for example, what I'm talking about is a collaboration with you know, Emily Harris. We've all seen her in the group. She's been really, really cool to talk to and very much outspoken in terms of being a woman that plays guitar. Mm-hmm. And so there were a few threads going on, different conversations about, you know, guitars. Like somebody was looking for a guitar for their girlfriend, and then there was another conversation about like guitar shapes that were not so flattering for women or comfortable. But what I saw was, you know, a lot of her responses were very well informed, very passionate. And again, coming from that design background, this is also a lesson that we've been working on with my daughter as well, is because she's very creative and she likes to draw and write, and, you know, that's kind of her outlet. It's like, when you see something that is a problem or something that's wrong or frustrating, rather than, you know, giving into that urge to tear something up or destroy or argue or whatever, like funnel that into creating, like create a better option. Then if you see something wrong, then, you know, use your talent, your energy to fix it. So there were a lot of good points made about some of the challenges for women to find comfortable guitars or ones that were really like reflective of the style that they wanted to be or play. And so in my mind, I saw this as like a challenge, like a design challenge, you know, taking inspiration from like the Annie Clark, St. Vincent, Ernie Ball, you know, model, which is, you know, very clearly something that both men and women think, wow, this is a really cool design, but it's more, you know, suited as far as like the size and the weight and the balance and all that to be comfortable for women to play. So the challenge in my mind was like, is it possible to design something that could be more accommodating universally, seeing that there's a rise in these really talented women that are looking for guitars that maybe are not as comfortable, or, you know, it's not a matter of like you see some of the other ones where it's just smaller and it's pink sparkle and it's like, here you go, sweetheart. Here's
right.
Here's something for you. There are a lot of guys I know that would rather play a pink sparkle guitar. Like my daughter, for example, she doesn't like to wear, you know, shirts that say like diva or princess, because, you know, she says that's not what I am. Like unfortunately she had to get a jacket from the boys section because she didn't want something that was bright pink. She wanted a yellow jacket, so she had to shop out of the boys section. So there's a lot of weirdness going on, and anyway, Emily and I talked a lot at length about this kind of stuff, and I'll let her kind of speak to the I guess the social dynamics. But in my mind, it was a design exercise. And it was like, what would be a comfortable shape and a format, something that would really appeal to everybody, something that guys would be confident rocking, and something that ladies can pick up and feel just as comfortable and confident to play. So we kicked around some ideas, and you had actually seen some of these too from some of our earlier conversations, like a single cut, and an offset. Yeah. So it kind of became a hybrid of those two, actually, where it's like an offset single cut, and the upper horn is kind of set and shaped and carved in the back in a way to try to be more comfortable. And so that means that the waist is offset, and then the lower bout kind of takes on a different shape to balance that out. Trying to work on making it lightweight, comfortable. It's not smaller per se, because, like Emily was saying, the guitar doesn't need to be smaller. Like a comfortable, like on the more narrow side as a nut width would be good, but the scale length doesn't need to be any shorter.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that,
anyway,
this isn't true across the board, of course, there's extremes on both ends, but as a general whole, it's not like most women probably have longer arms than I do. I mean, I'm a short dude.
Right.
That's not really a problem. I don't think.
Well, and it's the idea was not to build a women's guitar. It's not like, sorry boys, this one's for the ladies. It's really just something that is design should really be about solving a problem. And it was like, well, here's a new problem. Is there are a lot more people in this guitar playing realm that kind of have some different needs per se. So in the end, what we came up with together is a single cut, offset, lightweight shape. Mm-hmm. And we're both very excited about it. I've already started kind of prototyping it. And so when it's a little bit further along, I'll start posting pictures of it because, I want everybody's buy-in. I want people to be kind of a part of the process and really to see how it was made and how it was developed, rather than like introduce it when it's already said and done and deal with the backlash of opinion at that point. But anyway, it's really been fantastic working with Emily and kind of going back and forth and getting her perspective and trying to respond from what I'm doing. And the day I get to send it up to her, I'm really looking forward to it, because as soon as I'm done with it, actually before I'm done with it, when it's playable, when I can just assemble it, put strings on it, I'm going to send it up to her to try it out and give me some feedback so that I can still carve on it if I need to take more wood away or whatever. But if it ends up just being this one guitar, or if it ends up, being another option for ladies to play, if they want the small pink sparkle guitar, they can do that. If they want something that's the St. Vincent, they can do that. But if they want something that's in between, that's not as modern looking as the St. Vincent, that's what I want to do. They can play any guitar they want, just as well as anybody can. But it's more a matter of just taking into consideration at the design process, like a wider audience and really making some specific design decisions.
Got it. Well, that's really cool.
So yeah, that'll be coming up.
I like that. That's awesome. I think that, I've talked about it in a few different episodes here and there, but I think that this whole, there's always been female guitar players, right? But it's nice that,
right,
things are being viewed differently now. They did, how do I say this without sounding stupid? Like, they are long overdue, should I say, to get, kind of served in the marketplace. It's been a dude's game for so long, right, and that's fine. I like that I'm a dude. I like that my needs have been met, but there's a 50% of the market that's not been served as well as they could have been. So I kind of like seeing companies paying attention to that. I really like that.
Right. And the attempt is not to alienate anyone in the process. It's not like trying to serve that other percentage, then, you leave out the ones behind. Like the goal here is really to make something that's just universally comfortable, and coming at it with a more informed approach.
I like that. That is very, very cool. Well, I'm glad to hear that, Mr. Equitz. I just realized that what time it was, and we still haven't got into the most important question of all.
Oh man,
I know.
Drum roll.
Yeah, Kevin, what is your favorite kind of pizza?
Yeah, this is a question I've asked myself listening to your show for a couple years now. Like, what would I say to this? And it's tough because it kind of goes into two categories. So if I'm allowed to say two.
I mean, you're allowed to answer the question whichever way fits your needs.
if that's the case, and here's what I would say. There's a place called Tony's Little Italy near me, and the pizza is wonderful. It's super deep dish. If it's authentic or not, I don't care. But it's like so deep that there's this moment where the cheese and the bread kind of like meet in the middle where you don't know what's what. And it's like eating it, you feel like that machine in The Princess Bride that like takes years off of your life.
Right.
Where it's like, oh man, this is probably going to kill me slightly. But it is so good, and it is so wonderful, and it's simple. It's not like it's got all these fancy ingredients, but there's something just so like gratuitous about the cheese and the bread, and it's just wonderful. But on the other hand, and again, this may upset the other side, is we have a local place called the Pizza Press by us. I don't know how widespread that chain is, but you can kind of custom order your pizzas. But they've got one that's like thin crust, and instead of the red sauce, it's like olive oil, and you get like smoked mozzarella and like roasted garlic and artichoke hearts, and you can even get like like balsamic glaze, and they'll even put like arugula, dare I say arugula, on top of it.
I'm okay. I'm down with arugula.
Oh man, it's like it's not like your conventional traditional pizza. It's probably some, something that people would call like uppity or hipster or whatever, but I don't care. It is awesome. And you can eat a whole pizza, and it's great. So anyway, those two are really where I'm at. But I guess what's really at stake here is pineapple or not. And to that, I say pineapple is a crime.
Thank you, sir.
Especially on pizza. It has no business being on pizza. Please stop putting fruit on pizza. I technically tomatoes are fruit, but it's not. Just ignore that.
Yeah, ignore that.
Pineapple does not belong on pizza. That's really what everybody cares about in the end, isn't it?
It is. And I've known that it was a divisive issue for a long time. I feel like I was leading the anti-pineapple charge before it was cool, which is rather hipster Portland of me. But hey, no, I do think a weird thing. Well, not to go too deep into this, but I've come to like a lot of things that I didn't used to like. Right. Like as a kid,
that's cool.
There's lots of things I didn't like, and I've now grown to love some of these things. Like guacamole and onions. I used to not like onions at all, and now I like them basically any way I can get them. There's just a handful of foods that fit that description. Where I did sauerkraut. Used to hate it. Now I'm down. Like
down with the crowd.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a recent one. That's just like last year. I'm like, well, I haven't tried this in about 3 years. Let me try the sauerkraut again. Hey, actually, I could do this.
If you find a good one, that's like your gateway into it.
Yeah, exactly. So. All that to say is I still stand with the anti-pineapple crap. I'm not going to rule it out forever because there's lots of things that I thought I would never, ever like. And turns out that I like them now. And I would always rather like something than...
No, but it is still wrong.
It's bad. It's not a good thing to do.
Yeah, this is wrong. Well, you and Andy were killing me on the last... I know by this point it's probably old news by the time this thing airs, but... like when you guys were talking about all the different smoked brisket and, getting the charred this and that, like you went on and on about injecting it with beer. And then you started talking about smoked fish. And I was like, oh my goodness, just kill me. It was so stinking good. Like, you were talking about like your mouth was watering. It was like, I felt full after that conversation. It was like,
yeah.
In my head, I'd already eaten all that food and had like the meat sweats afterwards and everything.
Well, I'm glad we were able to provide you with an auditory meal. I'm not sure what that would be.
Yeah, it was just beautiful.
I do love. I'm no pit master by any stretch of the imagination, but I do know my way around the Traeger. That's one thing I feel confident in.
Dude, your brisket approach. I mean, that was like Breaking Bad level like meth recipe stuff, like all these different steps and temperatures and, process. It's like on the smoker, in the oven, in the cooler, back in the smoker. It was like, dang, that's a lot of work, man. It's a crafted fine culinary, meal
It's
right there.
It's really fun. I don't think it would be very fun on a big scale, like to do, like for a restaurant to do the brisket. Like I don't think that would be very fun. That would just be a crazy amount of work. But on like
you'd have to start it the day before.
I mean, I think a lot of them do. I think a lot of them are like, oh, gotta get up at 2 a.m. And to be fair, doing what I do, depending on the size of the brisket, you do have to do it that way. You have to get up really early. You just have to know when you want to eat and just kind of go, okay, well, this is how we need to do it. And it can be 12, 16 hours. You never know with some of these things. It's a process. But
incidentally, see, how long is the drive from Southern California to Portland? If you give me like a couple hours head start and then you throw a brisket on, I think maybe I could get there by
it could be doable. It's just I would love to do a cooked brisket for somebody one of these days. I keep threatening to do it for Mr. Keeley because he's a master chef, but anyway, that's a story for another day.
There's so many people up there I need to meet. I need to get my way up to the Pacific Northwest. We were chatting about that earlier, but yeah, I'm like Seattle as well. I know it's like another 3 hours.
Seattle, it's a little further than that, but whatever. Yeah.
Okay, 4 hours, whatever. Like I just need to get up there, but there's a lot of other places I need to go. Like we were talking about Summer NAMM. Like this is the first year I'm going to be at Summer NAMM. So that's the extent of my my summer travels. I think we're going to do a couple small trips with my family, but that's all I got is Nashville and back. But someday we'll make it up to the great Pacific
We'd
Northwest.
love to have you up here. It would be a wonderful time. I can tell you where to eat.
Got to hang with Leon and Justin. Got to hang out with you and Jess at NAMM this year, but like it would be great to hang out on your turf. Have you guys show me around town where the cool spots are.
We got a lot of them. Let me know.
Yeah.
Well, let's wrap this thing up. What do you say? All right.
Right on.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks to Kevin for coming on. And for Kevin, this is Blake. Good luck and good tones. I tell you, that Kevin Equitz is a real treat of a character. I really like him a lot. We had good conversations and good times, and he makes fantastic guitars. So if you get a chance, slide over and check out his work, because it's beautiful, and I can't say enough how awesome he is and how awesome his guitars are. So do check him out. Kevin's a treasure in the Tone Mob and guitar podcast community. So if you don't know him, get to know him. I highly recommend it. And other than that, let's see, what else do we got? Oh yes, we got a new giveaway that's going to be happening here relatively shortly. I'll keep you guys posted on all that. Check the socials, check the emails, check all that good stuff. We'll be announcing it very soon with a guy that's actually been around the industry for quite some time and has stepped away from it for it. Blah, blah, blah. Stepped away from it for a little bit and is now coming back. So it'll be cool to see what ends up happening, and I'll give you more information as I am able to. So, as always, folks, thanks for tuning in. I'll talk to you next week. Have a good one. One last thing before we totally sign off here. I just want to remind you that if you do any shopping at Stringjoy, that's Stringjoy guitar strings made in Nashville, that will help me out as well. As I've said for years, I'm heavily involved in that company, and I really do think they're making the best products on the market. So if you would like to try custom strings, go to tonemob.com/stringjoy and check them out today. I seriously love what the team down there is doing. I help them out with all kinds of things, and by you supporting them, you are also supporting me as well. And hey, you need some strings, so why not get some custom strings just for your guitar and playing style? Again, the link for that is tonemob.com/stringjoy, and that will take you right to their website, and you can do all your shopping through there, and that will help everyone involved out. So thank you very much. Talk to you next time. We are brought to you by the wonderful folks at Gun Street Wiring Shop. Yes, Gun Street Wiring Shop. I've talked about them before. I used to say based out of Bend, Oregon, but guess what?
Sean moved to my neck of the woods. Sean's in Portland. Sean is awesome and has helped me with a bunch of stuff lately. And if you have wiring needs for your guitar, he can help you too. If you want to get weird with it, he can get weird. If you just need to spruce things up a little bit, there's your guy. He takes all the guesswork out of doing your guitar wiring, and he makes it simple, and his customer service is top-notch, and I can't say enough good things about Gunstreet as a company. I really respect Sean and what he's all about, and the product is top-notch. I've got 3 different guitars that now have Gunstreet harnesses in them, and I could not be happier. So go to gunstreetwiringshop.com and check them out.